going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It is your boy, Dead on Dave. I feel like crap. I don't want to be on camera. Sorry I haven't been on camera a lot lately, but I'm sure most of you do not mind not looking at the old ugly mug. If you have any ideas of what I can put in place of this ugly-ass face, you just let me know. Right now I'm going with the Dead on Dave Productions logo. I could change that up, though. What do you guys think? Let me know. I feel like this shit is coming back into my lungs, and it's not good, but it is Sunday. It's your daily focus, and it's time for your viewer questions. So that's what we're going to do today, and I'm going to push through this because that's what I'm going to do. And hopefully tomorrow everything will be good. I will be less sick than I am now, and I'll be able to go back to the full schedule that I'm used to doing. And everybody will be happy, and there will be rain from the heavens, and it will be licorice-colored rain, and everyone will eat the licorice and then poop the licorice out later, and everybody has happy licorice life. I don't know. Don't ask me what the hell I'm talking about, because I don't know. So, before we get to the viewer questions, and I'm very excited about this one, because I'm finally going to answer a question that I've gotten multiple times, but I've yet to answer, either because I was waiting for the right time, or I just simply forgot. But finally, the best question that I've had at least 3 or 4 times that I've wanted to do, I'm going to do today. So that'll be a lot of fun. But a couple of sports things real quick I want to talk about before we get into it. First, Anthony Mason, the fan favorite New York Knick, very colorful player, very physical player. He was beloved at the Knicks, played for about 6 teams. But he's very beloved as a New York Knick. The crowd loved him. Very colorful, very energetic, very physical. Some people would have a different term for his style of play, thuggery. But I don't think it ever bordered on that. I think it was close, but he played a very aggressive, a very physical style of game, and it was always entertaining to watch. He was also in that same mold as like Dennis Rodman with the different colors and designs in his hair and stuff. It was always very interesting to see. He died at the age of 48 of congestive heart failure. He's been suffering with it for a while now. And it's sad to see these guys go at a young age, whether it be wrestling or any other sport. But the reality is they put a lot of stress on their body, and many of these guys don't treat their body as the temple that it probably should be for being a top athlete that they are. Many of these guys, especially in the 80s and 90s, that were top-line, front-line athletes, would go out drinking every single night and drugging and all kinds of things. I'm not saying Anthony Mason was one of these guys. I'm simply stating that a lot of these early deaths can be attributed to the abuse that you put on your body that kind of comes with the lifestyle of being a successful athlete. And it's unfortunate. And not everybody does it. Especially in recent years, the focus has been on how to prolong careers and live a more clean lifestyle. And that's the trend thing now. So I think a lot of these guys that are major stars in the sports world right now are probably going to last longer in life and be ambassadors for the sport, which is always a good thing. So Godspeed, Anthony Mason. 48 years old, congestive heart failure. It's a sad thing, sad day. Switching gears to the UFC, big event last night. 2 main event and co-main events were both women's fights, both fairly entertaining fights. Holly Holmes wins her debut via split decision. It was a decent fight. It wasn't anything spectacular, but she showed that top-level boxing and kickboxing that we'd expect to see out of her. And I think with time, she's going to be quite an opponent for somebody. More than likely, this woman, Ronda Rousey, who beat Kat Zingano in 14 seconds. Ripped this woman's arm off. I mean, it was incredible. Yet again, I really thought Zingano was going to pose a challenge. I didn't think that she'd be able to upset Ronda Rousey, but I thought she had a really good chance to put her on her toes. It just never happened. Rousey was just dominant again. I don't think you can really appreciate how good of a judo practitioner she truly is. This is top-level judo for any gender,
for any weight class, for any age. I mean, this woman is incredible at what she does. And right now, in all of combat sports, this is your most dominant champion, and it's not even close. She is that good. She has cleaned out that division, and there's been some very, very good fighters that have come through her. Miesha Tate, Kat Zingano, Liz Carmouche, very, very good fighters. But Rousey is just casting them aside. So what's next? Beth Carrera, who's undefeated as well. She's been going through Ronda Rousey's camp, the Four Horsewomen, and she looks like probably she should be the next in line. Then we have to wait until Chris Cyborg is ready to come down to 135. I don't know if she's ever going to make that weight. She's going to attempt to do it again, but she's going to have to fight at least once, probably twice at 135 before she's comfortable enough at that weight to come down to Rousey. In the meantime, Rousey's going to have to take that Beth Carrera fight and probably another Zingano match. Zingano probably deserves another chance because it was just a very strange way in which she lost. You get caught, you get caught. Zingano is probably going to have to take on somebody else, maybe even Holly Holmes. I don't know if Holmes is ready for that quite yet, but maybe you have to go to Zingano and Holmes as a title eliminator for the moment, simply because who else are you going to have Zingano fight? She already destroyed Miesha Tate. Who else do you put her in there with? You know, that's the question. You know, the good thing is she came out of this fight 14 seconds. She's not hurt. She'll be able to fight again soon. Expect Zingano to get back into the ring really, really quickly. But the only question is with whom? It might be too early for Holmes. Because if you put Holmes in there, you really can't make it a title eliminator. And she went the distance last night, and she took a little bit of damage. Who knows if she's going to be able to fight anytime soon within the next 2 or 3 months, which I think that's when we're going to see Zingano. So maybe Zingano and Beth Carrera. I think that would probably be a logical fight as a title eliminator for right now. And then you have the winner take on Rousey. But that's if you don't want to put Carrera in there now. So it's tough. Maybe even you give Rousey Miesha Tate again. I don't like the idea of that, but it might be the most marketable fight that's left for her at this current time. I don't know. It's a really tough situation when you think about it because she's cleaned out this division. Absolutely cleaned it out. And Cyborg's not ready yet, you know. So we'll see what happens there. But those are the two stories I wanted to talk about before we get into the viewer questions. And before we do a question, we're going to go to a comment first by Small Afro Games, better known as Jaron friggin' Walker. And I want to read a comment that he made last week. I have a bold prediction, and this is in regards to Fastlane last week. Brock Lesnar will attack Sting tonight. I'm only bringing this up because no. I was, yeah. Come on, Jaron, you're better than that. Why would you think that ever happened? I know it was a bold prediction, but you said it before that, long before, and it wasn't a bold prediction. That's what you thought was going to happen. So, neener, Jaron is a wiener. Oh, just kidding, buddy. I love you. Anyway, let's get to the questions, and I'm just going to take one before I get to the big one. So let's start with Logan Barrett. And he writes, so what the hell are they going to do with Bryan at WrestleMania? I don't think you can do a triple threat at this point for the WWE title, and giving him a loss at WrestleMania for the Intercontinental title wouldn't help him either. So in your opinion, what do you think is going to happen? Thanks as always, Dave. Well, I think we've seen it. We've seen where it's going. There's going to be, and it's already been announced that there is going to be a ladder match for the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania, and it certainly seems at this moment that Daniel Bryan will be involved. I'm thinking there could be as many as 6 guys in this match. Expect it to be a Money in the Bank style match for the Intercontinental Championship. I'm thinking right now it looks the 4 guys who are definitely going to be in the matches are R-Truth, Dean Ambrose, Daniel Bryan, and Wade Barrett. I could also see Dolph Ziggler getting into that, and maybe somebody else. So I think it could be as many as 6 people in this, and who knows if they decide to go more than that. So a loss for Bryan in that match wouldn't hurt him too much, but I actually think there's a very good opportunity for Daniel Bryan to win this match and become the Intercontinental Champion. I know it's kind of being set up for Dean Ambrose because multiple people need a big win right now, and I think the argument can be made for Ambrose just as much as it can be made for Daniel Bryan. But here's the thing. After this Rusev feud with Cena, he's going to need another top guy. And really, Ambrose, Barrett, or Bryan could all be very viable people for him to fight. And don't forget about the returning Sheamus. There's still a possibility that Sheamus gets involved in this situation with the Intercontinental Championship match to either be involved in that ladder match or to feud with Bryan and have the Sheamus-Bryan match happen at Mania. So I think both of those things are very likely of happening. So Sheamus could either be there or cost Bryan a shot at that ladder match. So that'll be interesting to see. But going back to Rusev, someone's going to have to take on Rusev at some point. And it can't be another Swagger or Ryback rehash. It's going to need to be someone like Ambrose. It's going to need to be someone like Daniel Bryan or Wade Barrett. I don't think Sheamus at this point, because they want to bring him back as a top-level heel, would make a lot of sense. But maybe aligning Sheamus with Rusev wouldn't be a terrible idea. Maybe have Lana open up a stable. I'm not sure. I would like to see someone more in that Russian block of his. An Irishman doesn't really work. But I don't know. We'll see what they decide to do. It's going to be very interesting, I think, to say the least. But to focus in on Bryan, I'm thinking one of two things. Either he's going to win this Intercontinental Championship belt, which I think would be huge for him and the entire roster. I think it would be really good to have Bryan as your Intercontinental Champion. For one, he looks like an Intercontinental Champion. And that's not to say that he doesn't look like a World Heavyweight Champion. But Bryan, at this point in his career, at this age, if he has a nice run with that Intercontinental belt, it will, for one, really put some prestige back on that title. And two, it's going to make Bryan look really strong, I feel, especially if he has some good feuds in there. So we'll see what they want to do. But I think we need a dominant champion that's taking on high-level opponents consistently. And yes, Rusev is with Cena now, but Rusev has not been that guy. Obviously, Brock Lesnar has not been that guy because he only fights every so often. So I think there has to be a working man's title that is being defended against the best consistently, and I think Bryan can be that guy. I also think Ambrose can fill that role. Here's another thing. After WrestleMania, they're going to have to do something with Bray Wyatt. It's going to have to be something huge, whether he wins or loses to Undertaker. It's going to have to be a huge storyline. So this is an interesting and good problem for the WWE to have at this point, is they have too many guys who are going to need major pushes. They got a lot of toys to play with, and I don't see all the disappointment that a lot of people are seeing with this year's WrestleMania. I think it's going to be a pretty damn stacked card, to be honest, and I think there's a lot of potential for some greatness to happen. So we'll see. Still a lot of time between now and then, and a lot of things can change, but I think those are the most likely things for Bryan. Hope that answers your question, Logan Barrett. Finally, the reason why this is not going to be the longest viewer question in the world is, one, my voice, I can feel it giving out, and it sucks. Two, this next question is something I've really been wanting to focus on, and I'm really excited about it, and I'm sure it's going to be controversial, to say the least. So this will be a lot of fun. So only 2 viewer questions today, and we'll get to more next week. Remember, if you want to be on this show in any capacity, there is a myriad of ways to do it. One, you can go ahead and put your questions in there, and I will get to them. You can make memes on Mean Gene Okerfun. Just type in Meme Gene on Google, the old Google device, and you can make memes, and I'll put them in my little slideshow here, and your meme will be used during the show. Woohoo! You could also add me on Skype, David Vancura, DavidVancura, and I will add you right back. And then you can be on the show in a whole bunch of different ways that way as well. I do the 5 random questions. If you have something that you created and you do that you want to talk about, you have a story you want to share, I'll put you on Creators Corner. There's all kinds of things that you can do to be involved with this channel, and I'm very excited about the possibilities of that. So get in touch with me and let me know. And I also have another segment I'm thinking about doing. It's called What You Got, where I just call you up and give you 5 minutes to talk about whatever's on your mind, and then I want to put together a big grouping of that for one major show. So tell me what you guys think of those ideas, and let me know what you want to do to get involved. All right, here we go. Viewer question from Stewie B. And this question is not just from him. I've had this question at least 3 or 4 times, and I've brought it up myself, so I'm excited to get to it. And who would be on your wrestling Mount Rushmore, and why? This is one of my favorite questions because Mount Rushmores are so popular to do, and they're important to think about. I want to make a few things very clear. This is not a favorites list. This is not my 4 favorite guys. Has nothing to do with that. This is a statue, and I'm looking at it like this. This is a statue that is going to be carved in granite on somewhere in the American countryside for all the world to see, and it will feature 60-foot, 18-meter size sculptures of the heads of 4 gentlemen that represent and define the wrestling industry. Okay? And I think that's very important to differentiate between a favorites list or greatest of all times list and what a Mount Rushmore is. So that's what I feel a Mount Rushmore is, and that's how I put together this list. So before I get into a couple other caveats, I want to talk about a couple of guys who did not make the Mount Rushmore, and I'm sure it's going to make some people's heads explode, and I completely understand it. But hopefully when I give you the list, you will fully understand the reasoning behind it. First guy who missed the list, the first guy that I had to cut, the guy closest to making it was Bret Hart. Bret Hart has all of the technical accolades that you'd want to put on as a representative of a Mount Rushmore. However, I don't feel that he had the creativity in the ring and the well-roundedness that you'd want to see out of a guy to really put him in as a representation of the entire industry. If this is a Canadian Mount Rushmore, there's no question. He's the top guy. He's the man. There's no question about that. And it's a Mount Rushmore of technical wrestlers. He's the first guy on that list. But overall, as a professional wrestler, as an entertainer, as a superstar, I just felt he just barely missed the list. Another guy who was really hard not to put on their Mount Rushmore is The Rock. I didn't put him on. Why not put The Rock in Rock, But I decided not to for a few reasons. One of them is just because of the short span of his career. I feel that to be on this list, you have to have a more what's the word? Your career needs to be more lengthy. It needs to be more. There's a word that I really want to use and I can't think of it. But it is what it is. He did not have as long as of a career as I would have liked, and his stay on top, while rather lengthy and dominant, it's just in the scope of other things. I just feel that if you're not the top guy of your era, you can't possibly be on the on this Mount Rushmore. And let's face it, as great as The Rock was, he wasn't the top guy of his era. There's another man for that. Another guy who didn't make the list that he will be on many people's Mount Rushmore is the Macho Man. I put a lot of consideration in the Macho Man, but it's another one of those situations where he wasn't the top guy of his era either. And when you're not, it makes things a little bit difficult
to justify. He's on a lot of lists, and he's one of my personal favorites. Probably one of the hardest guys to argue against, period, would be Bruno Sammartino. He doesn't make the list. One of the most dominant champions, if not the most dominant and longest running champion of all time. Sammartino carried wrestling at a period of time where it was not easy to do so. And he was a man's man. He's still a man's man. Do you see me doing a show, babe? Seriously, you're going to come in here and start asking who?
Yeah.
Talking about Bruno Sammartino. You don't know who that is.
Nope.
I know you don't. Isn't there like pies to be made or babies to be birthed or something?
Nope.
No? Nothing?
Nope.
In fact, she's getting ready to go to work to support my fat ass. Oh, that's the reality. I'm actually the housewife of this situation. Don't touch my toys, Alicia. I got my daughter touching my toys. Get away from my toys. You have your own toys.
I'm hungry.
Well, go eat something. Guys, I am doing a show here. Oh my God, I'm gonna kill somebody. But it's Alicia. Can I finish? Can I finish my show? Yeah. I will feed you and clothe you or whatever else you need as soon as I'm done with the show. So Sammartino, oh my God. Usually I would press pause, but I decided not to today. So enjoy my little insight into the world of Dead on Dave's personal business. Sammartino, he was hard not to put on as well for different reasons. A couple other guys, Steamboat and Triple H, I think they were both in consideration. I know some people are like, Triple H, you're a mark. No, Triple H's career is quite amazing, but he falls in that same category of not quite enough. But he's going to be, I think, the longer he has influence in the business and sculpts the future, I think you're going to see a better case for him being made as time goes on. And Steamboat, I may have only glossed over the Dragon, but I mean, for obvious reasons, when you're as good as he was, it's hard not to put him on. And the last guy is The Undertaker. The Undertaker is so hard not to put on this list because he basically falls into every one of the categories that I would consider to be important to make the Mount Rushmore. Now, it's just this is such an elite group of guys, and I had to kind of fit one in. I kind of had to make a caveat for another. So it was just really hard to not put him on there. Believe me, some of these guys that did not make it, you can argue is the actual Mount Rushmore. I mean, you could make the argument that it's Bret Hart, The Rock, Undertaker, and Bruno Sammartino. You can make that argument. And that's what's hard about this thing. So I've put a lot of thought into this, probably more than a normal person should put into a thought as stupid as a wrestling Mount Rushmore, but I can't help it. I'm passionate about it. So first off, this is my Mount Rushmore is not going to be called Mount Rushmore. It's going to be called Mount McMahon. Now, I know that is going to piss a lot of people off, but it's deserving. In fact, I'm going to be honest. Up until the last second, I had McMahon on this Mount Rushmore. He was on it. He was one of the four guys because he might be the most important figure in history of professional wrestling. So, in fact, I am going to say Vince McMahon is the most important figure in the history of professional wrestling, and that is why the mountain that these four men that I'm about to list off are on is called Mount McMahon. It's on the shoulders of McMahon. In fact, the mountain itself is going to look like the shoulders of McMahon because without Vince McMahon, the wrestling industry simply is not what it is. And people can take that as what it is, but when you really look at what Vince has done, now granted he is losing touch now, he's falling out of place, but I think with the current shakeup of the board of directors and other things, I think that we're starting to see that Vince is getting a lot of what we're saying, and I think he might even be agreeing with a lot of the out of touch stuff. You don't have to be that quiet when coming back in, babe. Jesus.
I
don't want to get yelled at again because
You-
of the stupid door.
You didn't get yelled at.
Yes, I did.
I did not yell
Yes,
at you.
did.
I yelled.
You did.
I yelled at you.
For the door, yes.
I didn't. Well, I yelled at you at the door in the past. Yeah.
Yeah, see?
Well, because you opened the door like a mongoloid.
I can't help it that fucking door is so loud.
Well, you just helped it now. You did it nice and quiet now. Because you were being considerate. You weren't being considerate before, so you got yelled at. You got nothing to say because I won. And if she's throwing socks at me. She's hit me in the face with my own socks. And let me tell you, these things are nasty. Anyways, so yeah, the mountain is called Mount McMahon for a lot of reasons that I've already listed, and many, many more so. Let's face it, we're not watching wrestling if it's not for this guy. Yeah, and people could say, oh, if it wasn't him, it would have been someone else. Maybe, probably not, but we'll never know. What we know is what happened, and McMahon is the most influential and important person in the history of wrestling. So, Mount McMahon. Who goes on Mount McMahon? Before I get to those names, there's a smaller mountain right next to Mount McMahon. It's going to be in the shape of a announcer's booth. And it will have two 20-foot tall figures sitting there. One will be Jim Ross, and the other will be Bobby Heenan. Because, my God, could you just imagine how awesome that would be? Both in their prime. The two most recognizable and important voices in wrestling history when it comes to announcing. It does not get more iconic than Jim Ross and Bobby Heenan. And Jim Ross, yes, he's an uptight type of play-by-play guy. However, he was able to always act well with a comedian-type personality like Jerry Lawler. Can you imagine what he would be able to do with a guy like Bobby Heenan? Who, now, when Jerry was younger, yes, Jerry was very funny, but he was nowhere in the same scope as genius as a comedic mind that Bobby the Brain Heenan was. And still is, really. I mean, the man's still alive. I shouldn't be talking in the past tense, but, you know, Heenan, oh, God, what couldn't Heenan do? I was just having a conversation this morning a little bit with Joe Cronin about that, about just how important Bobby Heenan is to the business. And if I have to lump all promoters, all wrestlers, all commentators, all announcers, all managers into one lump pile, and I have to pick one to be my all-time favorite person, for me, just my favorite person in the history of the business, it's probably Bobby Heenan. So those two at the commentator's booth right next to Mount McMahon. And then there's one other figure, a 15-foot tall little man with a microphone who will be interviewing all four of the guys that are on Mount McMahon. And, of course, I'm referring to Mean Gene Okerlund. You have to make Mount McMahon a national park and to make it work as the visible face of wrestling, to represent it in the greatest possible light, it's important that everything is represented properly. That's why the base for the mountain has to be Mount McMahon. That's why the announcer's booth has to be represented. And that's why the greatest interviewer in the history of the business needs to be present. Because as great as these guys were, they weren't made great on their own. They were made great by great announcers, by great managers, and by a great interviewer. I feel that Heenan satisfies both categories by being there as an announcer and as a manager. So I don't need to have another manager. But having an interviewer physically present, I think, is very important. And there's nobody better than Mean Gene Okerlund. So I think it's a cool way of looking at it. So that's why I decided to do it. So far, that's what we have. We have Mount McMahon with four figures on there, and they'll be 60 feet tall. Next to it, you will have a announcer's booth 20 feet tall, sculpted out of granite, and with Jim Ross and Bobby Heenan. And right next on the other side will be a 15-foot-tall Mean Gene Okerlund. Now the question is, who will he be interviewing? Who will be on Mount McMahon? Well, we have to start with somebody, and it might as well be the greatest in-ring performer in the history of the business. There is one man who stands head and shoulders above everybody else when it comes to just being able to perform on any level, on any stage, and he did it from basically day one. He's held every title in the history of the business, basically the first ever Grand Slam winner, winning every major championship within WWE. He's decorated. He was charismatic. He's influential. He's groundbreaking. And he was the champion of his generation. Now, granted, it was during a down period of the wrestling industry, his first run at least. But, of course, I'm talking about Shawn Michaels, the showstopper, the main event, the icon. So many of my memories go to Shawn Michaels almost immediately when I think about wrestling. It's just hard not to say that Shawn Michaels is the greatest that's ever done it. And that's the thing about these four guys. Not only are they the representatives of the business, I feel, in the best possible ways, they also, all four of them, are easily can be made the case for to be the greatest that's ever been in the ring. So it's kind of a combination of everything when you're looking at a Mount Rushmore or a Mount McMahon, as the case would be. So we start with Shawn Michaels, who has been at the forefront of as many things as Shawn Michaels has. He's worked as a face. He's worked as a heel. He's worked as an announcer, a GM, a commissioner. He's done it all, and he's done it with something that you just can't put your finger on. Not the biggest guy, but the most charismatic. This guy was incredible. He's one of my favorites, and he is one of my favorites too. And that's the thing about it. While this is not a list of my favorites, I can't deny the fact that Shawn Michaels is my favorite wrestler of all time. But it has nothing to do with putting him on this list, to be completely honest. I was as objective about it as I possibly could. But Shawn Michaels, first man on. Next man on, for me, it's Hulk Hogan. And my wife thinks I'm an idiot. She's like, Hulk Hogan. She hates Hulk Hogan. But she doesn't have the scope of wrestling that I do, and I think a lot of people do, that would understand that there is no Mount Rushmore. There is no Mount McMahon without Hulk Hogan. I mean, let's face it. This guy, the longevity he had in the career, the matches, the main events, the swerves, the heel turn, the NWO, the influence, the feather boas, the red and yellow, the say your prayers, eat your vitamins, train, and all that stuff. I mean, without Hogan, there's no Cena. Without Hogan, there's arguably no WWE. So as much credit as I give Vince McMahon, it was not a one-man show. Hulk Hogan did things that nobody had done before. He was a staple for mainstream wrestling. His crossover in the movies, his crossover into television, his crossover into other forms of media made him so important. And for all those reasons and many, many more, Hulk Hogan is number 2 on Mount McMahon. And by the way, there is no order of which these guys are going on. This is just the order that I wrote their names down, and I'm just putting a number in front of them. There's no order as to the importance of whose face is on this list. All 4 faces are 60 feet tall, so no reading into that. Number 3, Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's the reason why The Rock is not on Mount McMahon. Because, as I said it before, The Rock was not the most important person of his era. It was Stone Cold Steve Austin. Stone Cold Steve Austin is probably the most popular wrestler in the history of the business. The pops he gets are unlike anyone else. I feel over the last couple of years, The Rock's and Hogan's
Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair's. Other guys' popularity has waned. The Rock's pops are not as big as they were when he was in his prime. Here's the difference. If Stone Cold Steve Austin shows up at any event in the world and you hear that glass breaking, that pop will never disappoint. Because his popularity, the things that he was able to do, he redefined what wrestling and entertainment and sports entertainment was. He redefined it and almost did it single-handedly. He put the entire locker room on notice that everybody needs to step up their game. It was just fortunate and it was luck that the talent was there in the locker room to step up and help him elevate himself even higher. It's so hard to I just said that there is not a more important guy on this list. Everybody is the same importance, but that might not be true. Stone Cold Steve Austin might be the biggest thing on this Mount Rushmore. Maybe his figure is 61 feet because Stone Cold did it. He rescued an era. Without him, who knows what happens to the WWE in the 90s. It's just something to think about. You think about that right now. If the glass breaks anywhere in the world, you know what it means, and you know what's about to happen. It means it's your ass. That's what it means. It means your ass is coming. I don't know what the hell I was doing. My voice is completely trashed. Well, hell, son. Yeah, I got nothing today. And finally, the fourth man on Mount McMahon is the Nature Boy, the most decorated champion in the history of our industry, Ric Flair, the Nature Boy. Woo, styling and profiling. The wheeling, dealing, kiss stealing, limousine riding, Learjet flying son of a gun. Ric Flair changed what it was in the 80s, just like Stone Cold did in the 90s. Ric Flair went against the grain of what Hogan was and what the bigger guys were, like Ultimate Warrior and Macho Man. Flair was different. He was in the same vein as guys like San Martino, as guys like Ricky Steamboat. But he was able to do it with a flair, pun intended, like no one else could before or since. Ric Flair could be looked to as as wrestling's true first real all-around sports entertainer. A guy who did it on and off the screen. The guy who was able to do it in the ring just as well as he could do it outside of the ring. His promos, his interviews, his wrestling matches, they were all top shelf. He could he can elicit from you whatever he wanted. Hate, envy, love, compassion. He was able to do it all. And anybody that he was put into the ring with, he simply elevated. As far as in-ring performers go, there's three guys that did it better than anyone else. Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair, and Bret Hart. That's in-ring performances. And it's hard to argue against that. And it's important when you look at it and where to place that and how much importance does it have. Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels are not both on there just because of their in-ring ability, their technical prowess. No, it's more than that. They did things above and beyond that some of the other guys simply did not, could not, or would not do. And it was just very interesting. And Ric Flair is another one of those guys that anytime I need good wrestling, I want to watch a good wrestling, I know I could put on a Ric Flair match and be entertained. Ric Flair could wrestle by himself. And he got a little bit older, then he'd be able to wrestle in an entertaining match with a broomstick. Now he's a little bit older, so now he needs another body. That's the way he always says it. 66 years old. The funny thing is, I would still watch it. I hate to say this. I would actually still watch Ric Flair wrestle. It would piss me off because I don't think he should be wrestling. But there's just something about Nate that draws me in no matter what. I don't get tired of him.
I know a lot of people have. His popularity is certainly not what it was. I think the aura of who he is has not faded. But, you know, it's quite special when you have Ric Flair on any card in the world. So those are my 4. The Vince McMahon, the Mount McMahon. Shawn Michaels, Hulk Hogan, Steve Austin, Ric Flair, with a little 20-foot tall Jim Ross and Bobby Heenan calling the action, and a 15-foot tall Mean Gene Okerlund with a microphone right next to him, getting all of their responses and reactions. So that's my Mount Rushmore. What's yours? Tell me what you guys would do if you were in this situation. I want to know your Mount Rushmore, your top guys, the guys who represent the industry the way you think it should be represented. Give me your Mount Rushmore, and I'll read them off right here on Viewer Questions next week. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Thanks for sticking with me through all the sick bullshit, and I hope you guys are enjoying the ride. We will see you next time right here on Dead on Dave Productions. Peace.